We're live, Peter. Welcome everyone to this week's Gen XYZ, and we are missing our Z.
This is Gen XY this week.
Gen XY. Ashley is on vacation. We thought about having a replacement Gen Zer, but we like Ashley so much, we decided that we're just going to forge ahead. And
no one can fill her shoes.
No one can fill her shoes, and we get to make fun of her for not being here. So I think last time, Peter, Ashley wasn't here. We had an Ashley picture that we would refer to. I think I had her logged in through my phone, but she's on a beach somewhere having a good time, so we let her off the hook today.
Yeah, we'll let it slide this once.
Just once, one vacation, one day a year. But we're back talking about last week. We had so much to talk about. We had some great comments as we were discussing how to effectively manage your LinkedIn profile, specifically as a job seeker. That we didn't get through everything we wanted to talk about. So this will probably be a little bit of a short episode this week, but we wanted to cover the bases on that because your LinkedIn profile is so important when you're on the job market. You really can't cut any corners. So we didn't want to do that with this show either.
Yep. Yeah. This is, we didn't get to as much as we thought last time, as we ended up having more than we anticipated to talk about. I mean, there's a lot to go over on your LinkedIn profile. So I'm glad we're doing this.
Yeah, so I think where we were with this was we were getting to the point we were talking about the headline, right, and getting into from that to work experience. But did we miss anything with the headline? Because LinkedIn to me is the headline is probably the best word to use. Is how you should think of your profile, because if you think about a headline, it's an attention grabber, right?
Yep.
That's the whole purpose. This has been happening in the publishing industry for hundreds of years, maybe longer, where it's all about grabbing attention. And that's what you need to think of with your LinkedIn profile. You need to grab the attention of whoever's looking at it, who is potentially going to reach out to you for that next great job opportunity.
I know we talked about it last time. How do you feel about, having just your job title versus having something like cutesy? I've seen people, I'll say personally, I hate the people who are like guru. The words guru, ninja, and anything like that is overused. You're not clever anymore. Maybe you were originally when people started using it like 10 years ago, but at this point it just seems contrived. So I would rather see somebody that says, JavaScript software developer, blah, 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 at whatever company, or, a shortened version of their job title that actually tells me what they are and maybe the company, rather than having something that I'm like, I don't know what that means,
Yeah, I think it needs to be consistent with your brand. And if you don't think you have a brand, you do. It's about whether you control it or someone that decides what it is on your behalf. So if you are a marketer, for example, then you want to be bold, you want to be catchy, and you might get a little cute. I tend to agree with you. I don't think cute is should be the goal for most people. But if you're in the business of marketing and you might want to consider doing something that is unique and different. If you're a technologist, then you want to put your best foot forward in that regard. You want to show in under no uncertain terms that you're a serious technical person, right? You might be fun too, but no one's going to hire a technologist because they're fun. They're going to hire them because they're good at whatever technical role they're in. So I think that should be your guide. Make it consistent with the job that you're looking for, or as I said earlier, your brand, your public persona.
Yeah, and I mean, a lot of companies, they'll have titles that are a little ambiguous or something. So what I really like is when somebody has that title, they'll if they put in just short, plain language, effectively what they do, so that anybody can see it, and somebody who might not be in marketing can understand that you help people optimize their social media to get business or something. That's straightforward, tells me what your main responsibility at work is, so I can get behind those kinds of headlines.
Yeah, and I would go one step further, and wherever possible, if you're going to make a claim like that, quantify it where you can, right? To how much more business did you grow by X%? And so you really want to look at it that way. But to me, this is, you may disagree with this, but let me know what you think. LinkedIn, your profile is just headlines. That's it. Like that's all it really is. People get into wanting to tell their life story. and putting multiple paragraphs in their about section, no one's reading it. No one cares. It's just the way it is.
Unfortunately, the world we live in, long form stuff is going like it's getting shorter and shorter and shorter. Just like with websites, everything is bulleted, everything is lists. So you mean your profile shouldn't be any different. You want it to be easily read. You want people to be able to like skim it, because most people are going to skim it. They're not going to read every single word. And then they should be able to get the gist of what you do and what you're all about. So yeah, it should be optimized like that. It's not the place to be, super verbose and going on and on and on about everything. Like you should brag about yourself a little bit, but I don't need to know every single detail about your entire life on there. Like if I'm a good recruiter and you've done your job, I'm going to call you and talk about it with you on the phone anyway. So I don't need to see it all.
Correct. And that's it. It's about getting that call in the first place.
Yep.
I heard a phrase, it's not mine. I wish I had coined it, but the TikTokification of our society is what's happened, right? No one has the time, patience, inclination, whatever you want to call it, to read a lot of anything. So you really need to play into that and share your point and your message in the shortest and most concise way possible.
Yeah, I won't get into the what I consider negative ramifications of that, but it is what it is. That's the world we live in. So you're not going to change it by your LinkedIn profile. Keep it short, keep it concise, bullets, keywords. I mean, that kind of goes into our next thing is the keywords you want. Your profile is all about headlines and keywords. Like that's how people are going to find you. So make sure you have the appropriate keywords. If you want to be a software developer in a certain industry with a certain language set, you should have those all over your profile. You should have the industry words all over your profile. Somebody should be able to look at it and say, and not be like, oh, this is a generic software developer. They should say, oh, this guy wants to work in, the healthcare industry or whatever. There's a bunch of terms in there. I can see that because that's how recruiters use LinkedIn. They search by keywords. They search by profile terms. So make sure that you've got those, your profile optimized to meet your goals there.
Yeah, we're not in an ideal scenario right now with the way the job search process is happening, the way applications are taking place, the AI. We've talked about that almost every week, and so it's not productive for us to spend time trying to solve that in this conversation, but it is necessary to acknowledge, and then it's on you as a candidate to play the game as under the rules that currently exist, and that means understanding what's happening. And there is a lot of automation. There is a lot of keywords that are being used as the end all be all. And if your profile, I see so many profiles that just don't have anything on it, and you're not going to be found. So
you're missing out,
Well, think of it as a Google search, right? That's effectively what we're talking about. And you want to be the result that comes up. You want to be on the front page in the first position of that Google search for the thing that you want to be hired for. And that should be your mindset when creating your LinkedIn profile. That's probably not the most articulate way to say it. I don't know of a better way. If you do, please share. But that's what I encourage every candidate to think of with their LinkedIn profile is, how do I build it in such a way where I'm going to be in the top position for the job that I really want?
Whenever I look at profiles, like I've seen it kind of go both ways. And I feel like the pendulum is swung a little bit. Like everybody is like, LinkedIn is so filled with fluff and people, self aggrandizing people that are like, I'm the best of this, and I've done X strategic this and critical that, and I'm passionate about this and blah, blah, blah. I feel like there's so much, like it helps cut through it whenever somebody's just straight to the point. Like, I do X, I do Y. I've helped a company go from X to Y, like with specific figures, and just getting all that out there. If I look at a profile and they've got too much of that, I have to assume, I'm like, all right, so you don't do anything. You just spin up a bunch of stuff and hope you're a politician. You can just get through, the cloud of words. But if you've got a profile that's very clear for anyone who reads it to say, here's the keywords I worked with, this technology, I've got this skill, I've done X, X number of things. Like those are the things that are really going to help your profile stand out. Something that's easily read and helps anybody understand that you've done, these things.
But Peter, I'm passionate about these things. I'm passionate
about strategic customer experiences and like I don't care about that. I care you increase sales from this number to this number by doing this. Like that's what I care about. I don't care about your feelings and how all the business speak. This isn't office space where I need to hear about synergy and whatnot. So
But yeah, my all-time favorite is the one that, and you know who I'm talking about. That I won't name names first thing because I actually like them a lot. They're passionate about applicant tracking systems. I'm going to go on record right now and say there's not a person on the planet who's passionate about applicant tracking systems other than maybe their hatred for them. Right? I have passion for that. I don't like them.
The people that I see the most are the ones who are like, I'm passionate about AI and this. I mean, like, I can understand being like, oh, it's cool, but like passionate, like you're passionate about doing some random like task. Like, I don't buy it. Either that or you're like the most boring person on the earth, and that's the thing you're most passionate about.
All right, was an English major, so we're getting into the world of semantics today unintentionally. Katie said that, yeah, too much fluff can work against you. And it is not a competition to see who can add the most irrelevant things. Far from it. Go the opposite direction. So that's, if it sounds like a conflicting message, I'll clarify quickly. You want to have enough to show up in that keyword search. So having the keyword, if you want to be an SEO, hired as an SEO consultant, you need to have search engine optimization or SEO on your profile more than once.
Yeah.
But you don't need to tell your life story about how you became an SEO consultant. No one is going to read that. So they just want to get to the facts. One of the points on here that we want to make today for sure is just think of bullets, right? It sounds like headlines. It's all kind of the same thing. But when you're writing your experience, bulletize it always.
Well, I mean, we've talked about this a lot of times, but a lot of recruiters, they're going to recruit for different industries. If they're an internal recruiter for a company, they're probably covering different departments. I mean, they might have specialties they work on a lot. Third-party recruiters, they're going to have different clients. So you want to don't assume that the recruiter knows as much about the industry as you do. They might, but you want to make it easy for somebody who maybe just started working on healthcare roles to understand what you do in that industry. So too much fluff can make it confusing. If you worked with a specific, ERP system at a company, you should have that specific system on there because that's probably what the recruiter's looking for. They're not looking for, a bunch of things that are just going to make it more confusing. So that's all I'm trying to say.
Yep, that's a great point. And I think you can safely assume, or there's no harm in it anyway, if you assume that the recruiter who is trying to find a candidate match with the job that they're working on is not, their knowledge isn't too deep about that particular role. Now, any recruiter who hears me say that, don't get offended by that. If you do have true depth of expertise in that area, most don't. That's just the way it is. And it's just impractical too, right? So it doesn't matter whether they should. That's a wasted word. They don't. And so we say this all the time. I think every week, you want to make it easy for the recruiter to identify who you are and why they'd want to call you for that role. Make it easy to be recruited. Make their job easy. And you may say, I don't want to make their job easy. That's not what I'm here for. Well, it is. It really is. If you're a job,
that's absolutely what you're there for. You're trying to get a job. So making the person who's finding the job, even if they're an expert in that industry, if you got a really straightforward resume that's, matches everything up, they're probably working on a bunch of jobs at once. So it's just less brain power they have to dedicate to deciphering your resume.
Yeah, recruiters are on the clock, specifically third-party recruiters who work in the staffing industry, and even corporate recruiters too. So corporate recruiters usually have a gazillion jobs that they're responsible for filling. So because of that, they have a very limited time to spend on each profile they look at. Staffing recruiters, time is money. So they're motivated in a different way, but the same thing applies. They're trying to spend as little time as possible funneling out the bad candidates. Now, a good recruiter will always invest time, and you made this point earlier. It's a good one to have a live conversation and to get into some deep things there. But it's all about a quick look. Is this person right or wrong for the job I'm recruiting for? And then make a decision and move on. So headlines, bullets, tell your story in the fewest words possible, but tell it effectively.
Yeah, and when you're putting stuff on your resume, like you're gonna naturally, it's your resume, you're gonna brag a little bit about yourself, but make sure that you can back up whatever you've got on there. That's something that used to annoy me immensely when I would talk to somebody. And you could tell like they were not as knowledgeable. So make sure your experience, that what you've actually done, matches up to it, and that you can kind of talk the talk when it comes down to it. But I've talked to recruiters who've had candidates who they look really great on. That's the worst thing. You look really great on paper because they've got they've over optimized. They got too many keywords and everything, and they look great. And like, oh, this is awesome. I then talk to them, and it comes very apparent that, oh yeah, I know what that technology is, or I worked on a project for like 2 days and logged into this program, so therefore I put it on my resume. Like that's annoying. I think, and most recruiters they're gonna want you to be able to actually speak to the manager. And if you don't have a certain level, don't misrepresent yourself. Say that I've got familiarity with it as opposed to experience with it. That's where semantics matter a little bit to me.
Yeah, and well, Katie beat us to that. She never pretends how to code, so that's good because you will get caught. I mean, that's the reality. You may not get caught in the initial screening. You can fool a recruiter a lot of times. You mentioned a hiring manager. You're not going to fool that person, and even if you did in an interview, it's not going to serve you well ultimately, because when it's time to do the actual job, and that's ultimately what this is about, right? When you don't have a job, of course you're motivated to get an interview. You're motivated to get an offer. You want to start somewhere. You want a paycheck, but think longer term, right? It has to be a successful match over time, not just getting in the door, it's staying there. So don't oversell yourself, but also you have to be comfortable boasting a little bit. I had an exchange on TikTok a couple months ago. I made a comment along those lines, and someone sent me a DM. They said, I'm not comfortable. I don't think I should have to brag about myself. And I'm like, well, it's a competitive marketplace,
You gotta
right?
sell yourself a little bit. That's the point of your resume.
It is. And we could argue that it's unfortunate that that's the situation we're in. But as always, it comes down to supply and demand. And if you are on the wrong side of that equation, if you don't have a unique skill set that's in where there's greater demand than there is supply, you're going to have to figure out how to, through being assertive, creative, even aggressive at times, right? And I know that is way outside of a lot of people's comfort zones. Um, you're going to have to get uncomfortable and do those things. And there's so many ways to do it. That's the good news, right? It doesn't have to be in person. It doesn't. I saw a post, I'm sure you saw it too, on Reddit, where a guy is bringing donuts. He turned his resume into a donut box and he was delivering it. Look, I love that kind of creativity. It'll stand out. It'll get him attention. You don't have to do that. There's lots of other ways to stand out. Of course, LinkedIn is one of them.
If you are really dead set against selling yourself, that's fine. Develop a skill that you can command that, because I've seen people there's 100 applicants within 10 minutes to a job. In that case, you got to sell yourself. I've seen very high level developers who are the only person who knows how to do this.
All right, Peter froze. So down Ashley, now down Peter, who was frozen with what is that
Am I
called?
back?
Are you back? Here, your voice is
This,
back.
this is my new camera. So
Well, I was about to really test my ability to carry a live stream solo there for a minute.
I guess am I back now? You can see
You're
me, right?
back.
All right. Well,
You're gonna blame the camera. Um, where were you? You were talking though.
no, I was just saying. I mean, I've had developers who are the high level people who, they can be old mountain hermits and they're still going to get jobs. So if you really want to not sell yourself, then you got to be really good at what you do and develop a skill that you're the only person who does it.
Yeah, and this is off topic, but you have to take ownership of this yourself, right? The conditions are what they are, and we again aren't going to change them. We need to acknowledge that it's a competitive marketplace. It's not great right now, but it is great for certain skill sets, right? I mean, we get a lot of almost every day, not every day, but we get inbound opportunities for companies looking to hire through our staffing company almost on a daily basis in a couple of areas. And why? Because the demand outweighs the supply. There's not enough people with these specific skill sets. Now, we can't manufacture them either. So, as a recruiting firm, we have to live in the middle there. But um, take an honest assessment and then decide whether you need to develop some new skills along the way. But let's move on from that. Um, let's talk about the skill section of a LinkedIn profile. We didn't get to that part last week. It's another way to show up as keyword in keyword searches, and once again, headlines and bullets. Very consistent with that too by adding your skills.
Yeah, I love the skills section, just because pretty much anything you can think of is listed there, and you just add them. So you should have those maxed out on your profile. There's no reason not to have every skill that you've got, familiarity with, and don't just add random things. Make sure they're relevant, but that's something that's going to help. I mean, that's going to show up in searches. So if there's an area, if you're in healthcare, you should have a ton of healthcare skills on there. People can endorse you on them. I'm kind of on the fence whether that matters or not. Um, if somebody has a lot of connections, they might have a lot of endorsements. But I've also seen people who are very senior in fields who have all of these skills on there and they don't have a ton of endorsements. But I know for a fact from having met them, so they're high level in their company, they're very good at said skill. So that I can kind of take it or leave it. The actual having people endorse you for skills, but at least have them on your profile.
Yeah, and endorsements are like a Yelp review or a Google
Yeah.
review where most people aren't going to take the time to do that. It's not indicative of a lack of actually having the skill if anyone sees that. So don't worry about that. But add it. Take advantage of LinkedIn's features. That's really the message. And you said something I want to jump on. You said you should max it out, and that should really be the goal for anything on LinkedIn. If you need it, I'll just leave that statement there. Or if you need it at some point in the future. So LinkedIn, you may not think it's important now, but you should be maxing out your connections
Yep.
too. The more exposure you have to more people, more opportunities, the better you're going to be on LinkedIn. The more things will come your way. So I was wrong for years about this. And the way I use LinkedIn, I only connected with people I knew. And so it was very limiting. It's only been in the past couple of years where I started opening up my connections to people I didn't personally know. And in hindsight, that was a bad idea. I should have expanded my network much more aggressively and openly, because I've made some genuine relationships now that I have started doing that. So it's people who I didn't know it at first, but I've developed friendships and business relationships by being more open to connect with new people.
Yeah, I personally even need to do better at that. I mean, I have a lot of LinkedIn connections, but I could have a lot more. And that's one of those. It feels kind of strange for a lot of people because they're like, oh, well, it's like Facebook. I'm not just adding random people as my friends, but networking on LinkedIn is a huge thing, and that's the point of it, LinkedIn. So yeah, you should be trying to connect with as many people, particularly in whatever industry you're trying to be in. Connect with recruiters because they always are posting their jobs, as statuses, not even necessarily as job posts. So connecting with anyone and everyone who is relevant to your industry or area is great, and that's something that a lot of people don't do. I'll go to people's profiles and they'll have 50 connections or something like that. Like, you could do better than that.
Yeah, unless you're someone who could say, "I'll never need another job." Right? Maybe you own a business. Maybe you're getting ready to retire. Maybe you're you're financially independently wealthy. Whatever it might be, unless you're in that relatively small category, you should connect with every recruiter in your market and in your industry, because that's who is going to proactively reach out and introduce new opportunities to you. And
Yeah.
it's worth doing. If you hear this and you don't know how to find the top recruiters in your geographical market or industry, send me a DM. I'll send you a list of 3 sources to go to find them. But that is a top thing that everyone should do, and it is something that few people do, surprisingly. Now, we are behind the curtain with this. We know how the staffing industry works because that's the business that we're in. And we know as a result that it behooves employees, candidates, job seekers to have existing relationships with recruiters because they'll get the call when the position comes out. So you could spend a lot of time searching, or you could spend a lot of time being contacted, and you certainly want the latter. So if you are in the category where you may at any point in the future think you may need to, you may be on the job market, or want to even hear about new positions, you should carve out a couple hours to contact all the top recruiters in your market or industry, and just get to know them a little bit and build rapport with them. It's the most important thing you can do if you do nothing else.
It never, I mean, it never hurts to, keep your options open. Like I would never, I don't understand anyone who's like, oh yeah, I'm good. I'm always good. Like it doesn't hurt to have a conversation. And you never know when you're going to need those connections. It's better to start early rather than to be scrambling when say you get laid off, God forbid. And then you're trying to do it. It's better to be doing it all along. And then you're like, oh, well, I've already, I've sown all these seeds here, and now I can harvest them.
So why do you think if people have an aversion to doing that? Why do, just because they don't see the value in having those relationships with third party recruiters? They don't see.
I think networking is hard. It doesn't come. I mean, unless you're you're like a super extrovert who just loves talking to everybody, and even them, like you're not getting the immediate feedback of talking to people like you would if you were in a crowded room. So most people are probably not super outgoing they're not just going to go talking to strangers. Like I said, it's, even though it's through the internet, it can be a little bit, just not natural. I mean, I at least I know that's how it is for me. Like, it's not my natural inclination to just go talk to everybody all the time. So I have to do it with the conscious, mindset of like, oh, I'm trying to build, a professional network here.
So you think it's like people are intimidated to do it to some degree? Is that the right word?
Especially if you're newer in your career, if you're somebody who's just coming out of school or in your first job, I think that's probably a pretty common case. Either that or people just don't think about it. I mean, people don't, if you're doing a job and you're in the day to day of just doing whatever your job, you're not thinking about another job. You're not thinking about the job. We are in the job market, so outside of recruiters in HR, most people don't think about it, and they might only interview for jobs a handful of time in their entire life. So I just think
it's funny.
Right
there was a message exchange that someone sent me today, someone on our team, where an executive didn't want to meet with one of our team members, and my first thought when I see that is always, you don't value those recruiting relationships until you need them.
Yeah.
And that's the wrong time to do it. Invest in those relationships early. And then it doesn't take a lot of effort, right? And that's because we're talking about LinkedIn. We're not talking about inviting people over for Thanksgiving. We're talking about just having a connection, just minimal rapport. That's all it takes. And it makes such a big difference. I mean, look, if you just ask yourself this question, would you like a group of people who exist, who make their living by connecting employees with opportunities, aware of who you are and knowing what you want in a career opportunity, and proactively and thinking of you whenever those opportunities come up? Or would you not? Right? I can't come up with a reason why you wouldn't want that. And yet it happens infrequently. I don't know. It's a head scratcher for me.
Well, it's very apparent when people want something from you. And if they're like, I'm going to start treating you good because I need a job now. I mean, it doesn't feel good as a recruiter. And I mean, that's more of a in life thing. Like, don't just do something when you're very clearly doing it only for yourself. If you're trying to build these relationships, then they should be actual relationships where, you're on, cordial terms. It shouldn't just be, hey, give me a job, where they're adding people. So yeah, add everybody, be open to new opportunities, new experiences. That I think that is really the kind of moral. That's probably the most important thing on a LinkedIn profile, other than making sure it's fully filled out.
Now, recruiters are ultimately self-serving. They're gonna work with that person anyway, even if they blew them off when they didn't
Oh
need them.
yeah.
I mean, but you want the call before you need it, right? That's what we're really
I
talking
mean,
about.
but I will say, like, I mean, if somebody's good, they're good. But recruiters are gonna go above and beyond, even more so for the people that treat them. They're gonna work to get you the job regardless. But if you're someone who's a really good candidate who has shown a willingness to work with them, to be, treat them like a person and value that relationship, they will go above and beyond. They can do a lot of things, and I've seen recruiters go way above and beyond to the point where the candidate probably doesn't even know all the hoops they've jumped through to help this person get a job. So yeah, if you want the benefit of that, it goes both ways.
100%. All right, a couple more things before we wrap up today. I think we've covered most of this profile stuff, but
Yeah.
um, you really want to keep your personal life personal.
Yeah.
Right? So use that space for the most relevant, pertinent information. Don't go off script. It's an election year. Now that is something people are passionate about. We laughed about passion. I'd rather espouse your passion for things that you're not really passionate about than your passion for politics. Don't do it. Don't get involved. I'm seeing that on an increasing
That's
basis.
that's not even LinkedIn. That's a like don't post things that you don't want brought up in an interview. Like,
Okay, so yeah, fine, right? Don't do that as a rule, but specifically don't do it on LinkedIn because we all know that you will immediately alienate 50% of your audience, and there is no business benefit to doing that. Um, just avoid the personal stuff at all costs. I mean, if you want to share that you did, a charity event, I mean, don't confuse that, right? If it is relevant to who you are as a person, and there is some greater good associated with it, by all means. But when it comes to opinionated stuff where you're sharing your opinion, that's what I really mean. You should avoid at all costs on
I mean, I'm
LinkedIn.
fine with people posting, like, on Father's Day, they post a picture with their kid or something. They're like, oh, I love thought. Like, it's stuff like that is fine. It gets annoying if it's too much. This isn't Facebook. You shouldn't be posting pictures constantly of unrelated to like your professional. But like a little things like that show that you're a multidimensional person actually can work, I think. But yeah, don't make them. You shouldn't be posting stuff that's like too controversial or too anything that's going to be off-putting to people. I think you should keep it. It's a professional workplace, to keep it professional.
Yeah, that's a perfect way to sum it up. So last point I wanted to make was have a trusted friend proofread anything that you post on your
Yeah.
profile. Um, Recruiters don't like seeing mistakes. Actually, I'll take that back. Recruiters are relatively forgiving about mistakes with typos and
I've
grammar.
seen some awful resumes, so you'd be
Yeah, well, if you're in staffing, you're in recruiting, you know that most people aren't really good at making resumes because it's not something they do with frequency,
yeah.
right? They may do it only a few times in their career, as you alluded to earlier. But hiring managers are some of them are a nightmare about that. One typo, I'm talking a period, in a list of bullets, not being there or being there when the rest of the list of bullets isn't, will rule a candidate out for that silly reason. And you may say, when you hear that statement, well, I don't want to work for a company or a manager who does that. That's a bad way to think, right? Don't
Yeah.
let that it distract you from the salient point, which is make sure your information is clean, it looks good, have someone you trust and that cares about you always review your profile.
I mean, it's a resume. Like that, just like you should have someone review your resume, you should have someone review your profile. Not only for typos, for having just your sentences making sense. You might have meant something a certain way, but it might not be clear to them, and they said rewrite this so that it's more clear. Like, that's easy. And you got while a lot of people are going to be like, I don't want to work for a manager that's going to be that nitpicky. Okay, fine. But you got to keep in mind, like, you are who you are, in every interaction with that person. They had one interaction, which is them looking at your profile. They're like, okay, my initial interaction shows that they're sloppy. If they've known you for 10 years and then they're not going to care. They're probably like, oh, whatever. But if you've got this many interactions, every one of them counts exponentially more.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about first impressions. That's the first impression. You're
Yeah.
not going to have a second chance to make it, and they'll move on because of if when you don't know who these candidates are and you have to pick a couple of them out of hundreds or thousands, you're gonna move past the ones that are making mistakes. That
Yeah, I
happens all
mean,
the time. So
you say it's a typo. I don't. How do I know that you just have poor communication skills and that you wrote that like wrong? Like I don't know that you just missed that period. I might think you could just not understand how punctuation works. You know. So yeah, I think it's an important thing. Have someone review it other than you. Just like
all right, I think we covered everything we want to talk about the LinkedIn profile. Did we miss anything?
yeah. I mean, if somebody watched all this and watched our last one, they should have a pretty strong LinkedIn profile.
That's it. Yeah, check out part one. It's posted on all our social channels if you haven't seen it already. Hopefully, we'll get Ashley back next week. I think she's on the beach. We're in the Dominican Republic. Is that where she is? Somewhere having
Caribbean.
so much fun, probably. So we'll look forward to having her back next week.
All right.
Goodbye for now.
See ya.